Welcome to Manager Tools. This week, how to handle body odor, part 1. The questions this cast answers are, how do I tell someone they smell? What should I say to someone who has body odor problems? What should I say to the team when someone has body odor? For answers to these questions and more, stay tuned. Hey, y'all. June 27th, 28th, and 29th, which is in just a few weeks, we'll be in London. And we're offering an effective hiring manager, and effective communicator conference. And we would love to have you come out, bring your team. If you are looking to get a group trained or just yourself, if you're wanting to learn about hiring, management, or communication, we're going to come across the pond and see y'all. We're so excited. We really enjoy our time in London and spending time with organizations there. If you're looking to register for that event, please come to manager-tools.com/training in order to sign up for our London conference, June 27th, 28th, and 29th.
This is a re-release of a podcast that we did back in June 2007, the Body Odor podcast. And folks, I've found in my experience, a lot of people are surprised that this podcast exists. I mean, this is one of those podcasts. It's like, really? There's a podcast for that? But we actually get asked the body odor question a lot. And it stuns people that we actually have an answer. They just don't think that people would ask the question. It's usually a manager mentions it in passing. Well, thanks for this help, but even you can't help with this other problem that I have over here, right? And we always say in response to those individuals who have doubts maybe in what we actually have data on, what's that? Would love to hear your question. And the reply we often get is, well, I got this person who's creating problems on the team, and it's, and we know. That's when you know what it's about.
Yeah.
And you're like, is it body odor?
How did you know?
Right? Because no one wants to
guess?
say it. No one wants to say the words.
Yeah, it's oddly almost this taboo subject.
Yeah.
Even though it is a reality for humans and therefore for managers. Yeah. And we've been doing this for so long that it's pretty rare that there's something that we don't know about or we haven't experienced or we're not aware of or we don't have guidance on. Even just in keeping with our views and focus on professionalism and kindness and thoughtfulness in management. So we love to hear the can you stump the Manager Tools team type topics. And this one seems to be one where people just assume we won't know. And I find myself, when I talk to people, using it as a piece of proof that we have podcasts on
Everything.
We've been podcasting for so long and people say, oh, podcasts are cool now. So that's different. But people say, oh, well, what about this? What about this? And we've been doing this long enough to have covered most of it. And okay, people don't want to talk about body odor. But the thing is, all people smell.
Yeah, they do. And if you don't think you smell, you're mistaken. And
yes,
the deodorant or antiperspirant in your bathroom closet, to say nothing of the perfumes and colognes that people are wearing, followed by scented toothpastes and scented body lotions. And there's a bunch of smells.
Yeah. And you've probably seen the commercial. I think it's Febreze where they talk about going nose blind. Your nose starts to ignore smells that it is used to. I mean, it just like eliminates the data point. If you use products of any kind, hairsprays, beard oils, perfume, to your point, all of that stuff, even if we're not saying it's a negative,
Yeah.
people have smells. I mean, I have a friend who his house always smells amazing and his clothes, everything and it's a very signature, like a signature scent, right?
Yeah.
That's just part of being human. And you go nose blind to your own smell.
Yeah. So you put on more product.
Well, and there's that.
Yeah, right. You just start layering it on.
I think a lot of people associate it with more product with women. And I have found, living in Austin, a lot of people men wear beard oil, and it is often quite scented. Like there's a lot of them here in Austin. It's really cool. It's like trendy. So it's no longer just that women are using a lot of products. If you live in I would assume like San Francisco, Austin, there's some cool kid places and they have scents. So, okay. Because everyone smells, maybe good, maybe bad, whatever. It's going to happen that you probably are at some point going to have a conversation with a direct about their personal scent. Even if it's like too much cologne or whatever. I used to work with someone who had like a wax melty guy thing on their desk.
Yeah, like a Scentsy or like a Glade plug-in refill even, like a smell.
There you go. And there was a conversation about it, that it was too strong in that small of an office space, that kind of stuff. And that's not part of our coverage today. But we are here to talk to you about how to have a conversation with your directs about their personal scent.
Exactly.
Because that's what we're going to call it.
Yeah, we're going to call it. We're going to call it personal scent for probably a silly reason. When you say body odor, it has an inherently negative connotation.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Most people would agree that saying to somebody body odor or saying the words body odor are defamatory. And we think most people would likely say that they know they have some amount of personal scent, but they would take offense to us calling their personal scent body odor.
Absolutely. It's connotation, denotation, right? So lots of people have personal scent, and I think about signature scent. You and I have talked about like last year, I had this big concern about my personal cologne because other people started wearing it, and I was frustrated that everybody smelled like me, which is, I realize, quite silly. So there is two different versions of this, how to say it, and one has a more negative connotation. And we just want to bring up that the language of both are true.
Correct.
Personal scent and body odor are one and the same. Same thing.
Exactly.
So why not say personal scent as opposed to body odor? Because it has a different connotation and therefore is like less inflammatory, less problematic. And all of this is in service to the fact that if you're going to tell someone, if there's an inherent difficulty in telling someone that they have body odor, because the verbiage is off-putting.
Yeah,
so
it's because you said body odor, at least in part.
We're going to switch up the words. We're going to use a different version of the same thing and talk about personal scent in this cast, because it'll make this conversation and this problem a lot easier to have a discussion about. And that's what we're going to recommend that you do.
Exactly. And folks, this podcast isn't simple. That is, we've got an outline, which I'm going to share with you in a minute here. And it's got 3 major areas. Each of those major areas has 4 sub areas. And we know this is a lot, but it creates essentially 12 steps or guidelines that we recommend you follow. And it seems like a lot, but this plan works exceptionally well. And several of the recommendations are quick, almost effortless. The outline, I'm saying the outline is going to cause you to think, oh my gosh, this is a real huge thing. It's really not. They're simple, but we wanted to ensure that you had all of the information. We thought it was best for you to have all of it rather than too little. And it's necessary and sufficient stuff. So, our outline for today's cast. First off, some general guidelines. Think personal scent, think impact, think causes, and know your resources. Then we're going to talk about the preparation. So, getting specific information, do not commit to specific action, gather data and decide, followed by the delivery of it. Delivering privately, delivering directly, offering resources, and discussing follow-up.
So we start with general guidelines around this issue. First, think personal scent. We've said this probably, honestly, it's a mental preparation piece, and hopefully our discussion will help you to feel more comfortable thinking of it as personal scent. Mm-hmm. Because as we said, the phrase body odor is immediately negative connotation, negative association. I think partially because of the idea of like it being about your body as opposed to like products or whatever like that. Like that specific word doesn't make it any easier. And there's really no sense in making this any harder.
So it seems hard enough. It seems hard enough.
Yeah, it's already delicate enough. You're already probably filled with some trepidation. No sense in making it more difficult by pushing it into the direct's face a little bit, oh my gosh, body odor. But even more thoughtfully, it's broader really than that because we do all smell, and not the vast majority of us, okay, let's say plus or minus 90%, 98%, and we'll hope even more, put on deodorant or antiperspirant every day.
Right. It's what we all do.
Yes, I would suggest all is a very close approximation. And so then we have to be careful because we ought to step lightly around the idea that we smell fine and that someone else might not, that someone else might have body odor, because we all know that our bodies are capable of producing odors and we are dealing with that. We should be aware of the fact that sometimes it might also be us who smell. That could be true. So there you go. That's just tend your own garden kind of thing. But really, we're trying to think about this issue more effectively, less pejoratively, and truly more accurately. It's more accurate to think of how a person smells as their personal scent and not a body odor or body odor in general. And when you tell someone, oh, you have body odor, you're not telling them something of any interest to anybody. It's like saying, oh, you have a head or ears. Oh my, you have ears.
Welcome to the rest of us.
Yeah. The thing is, that's part of the issue, right? Is that it's only pejorative or it's only of interest if it's an issue.
Exactly.
So the key point being everybody has an odor. And the only reason usually that people talk about it is if it's negative. And we're not going to do that.
Exactly. What all this means is, as a general rule, do not think or talk about body odor. When discussing the issue, think and say personal scent. It's not that you should never say body odor. I mean, the words exist, so I suppose you could say them. What we're saying is it's just plain ineffective. It's less effective to use words that come across as, let's say it, a personal attack than it is to use words that mean the exact same thing and speak to the exact same topic that are more neutral in their impression. It's that. Just use different words. It's more effective. Think personal scent. We've all got it.
Yes. And okay, so we've shifted our mindset. And now we want to think about the impact of a personal scent.
Exactly. And maybe the most important thing that you're going to hear in this cast, personal scent, or BO, is not the issue. A person having personal scent doesn't matter. What matters is the impact it's having on your team, and its performance is the issue. That is. If everyone smelled bad and no one cared, it wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter. But everyone does smell bad in some jobs at the end of the day, and no one complains.
Yeah, I'm imagining people working outside. I'm imagining NFL locker rooms.
I was going to say every professional sports player you can imagine.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's some jobs are going to cause BO and everyone's got it, so it suddenly doesn't matter to anybody at all ever because this is what we do here, right?
Yeah.
So think of it that way.
Anything with physical exertion or high heat levels or anything like that, you're going to have to deal with that kind of thing.
Right.
And so if it's not bothering anybody, either because it's part of the group or because it's part of the norm, then no issue.
Exactly. So you've got to avoid thinking that your job is to eliminate the scent. And let's be clear, it's uncertain whether or not you even can eliminate the scent.
Genuinely.
Exactly.
Honestly, think of all the stuff that goes into it.
Exactly. But what you can do is influence that scent's effect on the team. You can change the impact that has on your team. Sometimes just agreeing to look into it is enough.
That part is particularly interesting to me. I think sometimes the issue is that someone has a problem, and to be clear, it's not the person with the personal scent, it's someone else. And the person with the problem simply has an emotional response to the personal scent, and their emotional response can be reduced or assuaged simply by being heard.
Exactly.
And so keep that in mind, y'all.
And also, like for instance, just for example, if someone were to find out that person's personal scent was due to a medical condition,
which we've seen
before, exactly, the original person complaining may very well still notice the scent and yet going forward no longer be bothered by it.
Yeah, or just feel different about it.
Just feel differently about it.
And it's so much easier, I think, if there's an understanding that some of these conversations are not going to be as fraught as you might be imagining them.
Yeah. Oh, we work ourselves up in our own minds, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is the fear of a person's response to the conversation.
Yes, exactly.
When in fact, it could be that this comes out totally normal, totally neutral.
Yep.
And remember that your job in these situations is to determine the best course of action to minimize the impact of the scent issue on your team. Do not break out or become, a bottle of air freshener. And we do feel you should not move people if that's what you're considering in most cases. Think, though, about results and not about scents.
Yeah, impact, not scent. Impact, not problem.
The solution may well be just to tell the complainant that you've looked into it, and that could assuage their emotional response or their issue. And they accept your having looked into it, you're having listened as fixing their problem. And then essentially the scent stays and is no longer an issue.
Exactly.
That's a thing that could happen here.
It totally is. And folks, there's another powerful reason to think impact, not odor. If you attack the odor, you may be perceived as attacking the person. Even if it's cologne, let's say it's perfume, it's some sort of scent product that a person is putting on. They could describe their personal scent as a form of personal expression. And they may very well claim rights about their ability to express themselves in the workplace. But addressing the impact is not an attack on the person or their expression at all. So it alleviates that issue. It is essentially a defense of the organization. And there's ample case law and evidence that while employees do have plenty of rights in the workplace, some of those rights can be and are legitimately curtailed by the organization in the pursuit of its mission.
Right. You're not allowed to use an air horn in your cube because it's disruptive.
This is how I express myself. I express myself with this air horn.
Nightmare. We sit close together in cubes without private spaces because of cost controls. And that's a reasonable accommodation for individuals to make for the firm.
Yep.
And it's one of the things that we do in organizations that wouldn't necessarily be our exact personal preference.
Right.
To support the firm and the mission. And if you're wondering, y'all, it's settled law in all but the most bizarre of cases that there are things that we engage in as part of the organization. And if you're in the United States, the majority of the people listening in the States are probably in a situation where they've chosen to work here. So again, you're putting yourself into the organization and by effect, adopting and accepting the organization's rules, bylaws, requirements of you, cubes, such and such and such. And therefore, you've signed up for this, essentially.
Yeah.
To sit in the cubes and all
it's
that.
Not being done against your will. You're willfully here.
Yes. And so as the manager, you have your own rights as a representative of the company to defend the processes of the organization and of the work that we're doing that create value, which leads to salary.
Yeah.
Impact of the scent helps us get to a solution here more effectively. And one more important point about impact, this is something to be considered. If one of your weaker performers and someone prone to complaining brings up a scent issue from one of your better performers, let's say, and no one else seems to mind, what really is the impact of this problem?
Mm-hmm.
And do you need to do anything about it? Really?
Really?
Really? Because if you only think about body odor, then you might end up doing something which would be penny wise and pound foolish, or scent wise and substance foolish.
Yeah.
Even though if you were to think about it differently and think about impact, you might proceed in another way.
Exactly.
I do have to say, I'm starting to feel really silly about my whole cologne problem last year.
I know. It makes you much more reasonable, right? When you start having these conversations, you're like, oh,
Yeah,
never
I'm kind
mind.
of hopeful. I do remember when I first found the perfume and like really loved it, right? And then someone else coming into a room wearing it. And I remember being quite cheesed about it. Now it seems quite silly. Although, full disclosure, that's also like a social problem. It's not an at work problem. Like, I don't have that issue at work.
Right? That's the thing. Exactly.
Well, I have seen people in conferences wearing it. So there's that.
There's that. It's gone mainstream.
Again, this is not about Le Labo. This is about
right?
how to handle body odor. Although some people don't like it. So that's fair.
We can't change the current economic state, yet we can make wise financial decisions. And if you have more than 15 managers that need to be trained, it's probably better from an economical standpoint to have manager tools come directly to you with our training. We can train up to 30 people in one day-long session. That makes our client training almost half price when you compare it to our public conference pricing. And we can afford you more customization if we visit you. So contact us at maggie@manager-tools.com to learn how affordable our organizational training is.
Okay, so from impact to causes.
Causes, exactly. And this relates to the personal scent versus body odor language recommendation. When most people think body odor, they think very likely of personal hygiene. But if you think personal scent, it helps you consider other very realistic and very reasonable causes of the impacts of scent.
Yeah, what if someone is wearing too much Le Labo cologne?
Exactly. This is also an issue we've had to deal with, right? What about incense at work?
Oh.
Remember those incense sticks people burn?
And I think a consideration of this is a lot of people get headaches, really intense headaches from certain smells. I know a few people who there are specific, and incense brought this to mind because there's a lot of very old, scents and things like very base perfume type. I don't know a ton about the science of cologne and scents and things like that. Although I know that there are some very old, very base scents, and some of them are very expensive. Like rose oil, like rose extract is incredibly expensive, and so it's less often used. And like sandalwood and these types of like base notes. That's it, notes. That's the silly thing to be searching for. But it gives people migraines. Some people are essentially like nasally allergic. That's not a thing.
I do know. I think a lot of flowers are. A lot of florals are. For example, if you're in the hospital, you cannot receive lilies.
What?
Yeah. I mean, folks, you might not know this, but I am Canadian. And yes, you cannot receive lilies in Canada anyway, because there's something about that scent profile that is, I don't know, irritating maybe, or maybe it's just the strength of it. But there are certain flowers that you can't have delivered to hospitals. And when you're at a florist, they will say to you, if you're buying it for the hospital, you need to pick something different. Yeah. Because there's a certain scent profile with certain flowers, rose, lily, that is problematic for some individuals?
I don't think that rule is in effect in America, only because my grandmother, I do believe, has received lilies at the hospital. I didn't know that. That is such a good example of this. Okay, so we talked about incense. What about flowers at the hospital? What about medical conditions?
Yeah.
What about dietary differences?
Right.
Your diet does have a huge impact on your scent. And even I think age, and I don't mean of a certain age, I mean at different phases in your life,
Oh, yeah.
your personal scent shifts.
Yep.
And so I don't mean like old versus young. I actually mean 10 years ago, your personal scent may have been different than it is now because of even like detergents and things like that. You put a lot of chemicals near your body, and
your skin is an organ.
No joke. It's your biggest organ. So there's a lot. There's all these different examples. The reason most of us tend not to notice other scents is that we're culturally, dietary, physically, ethnically, socially similar in many ways to a lot of the people around us. So it's normalized by using the same, detergents and things like that. Like you're all shopping at the same store or something.
Being around people that are like you.
Right.
But then
someone might not be.
Exactly. But then you're in a cubicle environment, no walls, no space to separate people. And someone next to you might be of a different age or different race or different culture, have a different diet, be on different medications, have different hygiene habits. And that's when scent becomes an issue, right? You could really start piling up the possibility that a scent is going to be different enough to cause an impact.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons this can occur. So when scent becomes an issue that creates the real issue, that is a performance or team impact, do not jump to hygiene. There are a lot of reasons for personal scent. Stop and remind yourself what all of the various causes of personal scent could be. And keep your mind open to data you might gather so you are both sensitive and effective when you deliver the communication and follow up.
You should consider culture, race, diet, medical and health conditions, spiritual practices, hygiene, products that they use, cologne, lotion, perfumes, fresheners, detergent, footwear, socks. Y'all, even being pregnant can change the way your body smells. It's a huge change in your body, and it could change things for a person. So let's not jump to conclusions. In fact, sensitivity here will help you to be successful. It's important to be sensitive and thoughtful.
Exactly.
Considerate of the individual, which is something we've always talked about, that you should manage people as individuals and not as a group, right? You manage them.
Yeah.
Let's kind of like meet them where they are. And this is a great example of that, doing that here.
Exactly. And the next thing then is to know your resources. You don't have to do this alone. You're not by yourself. You're not an island manager. You've got some resources. Now, be mindful. We don't recommend you turn this sensitive communication over to HR, right? We don't recommend you. Yeah, in most cases, we don't recommend you get another person who's, let's face it, compared to the manager, pretty much a stranger to that direct.
Yeah,
to
for
have
sure.
that sensitive conversation, right? You've got a relationship. You've been there. There should be an amount of trust that exists between the two of you. Camaraderie, at least. You don't want to have a stranger come in and deal with this.
Another way I think of it is just, if you're a manager, if you've been doing one-on-ones with your direct, you have proven to them through communication and repetition and spending time focusing on things that are about them, that you care about them. And if a random person from HR, not that, okay, maybe your company has an HR person with some experience. Okay, we could ask, it's like a phone a friend.
That's a phone a friend for sure.
Yeah, because imagine if someone you trust comes to you and says, hey, dude, got to talk to you about something. that's very different than if somebody you don't know it. And if your friend goes to somebody else and is like, hey, can you talk to this person? It's like, why don't you just talk to me? Like, we understand that you might be concerned that this conversation is going to be fraught, or that this is not something you're used to dealing with. So you might have some turmoil or emotion or worry about it. We totally get that, y'all. And let's not opt out just because it won't be easy, or we're scared, or we're stressed. Like, let's have enough care for the person that's having this issue to handle it ourselves, because we know that we'll handle it in a respectful, ethical, kind, thoughtful way.
Exactly.
Because you're listening to this podcast and that random HR person is not. However, you can leverage like a resource, right? So you think about the impact, take a moment and make a list of the possible available resources.
Exactly. And we mentioned, does your company have an HR person with some experience handling this?
Maybe,
right?
yeah.
You could phone a friend. What do they think? Is there a doctor or a nurse that a referral could be made to?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a wellness program with dietary information that could be shared? Are there peers of yours or other departments fully with employees of similar backgrounds, right? If we're looking culture, we're looking things like that. Maybe there are other people. Potentially, there may have been similar issues brought up to management in those instances. If you haven't visited, you could visit the Manager Tools Forum. On our website, manager-tools.com, we have forums where thousands of people from our community are contributing ideas. You could say, hey, has anybody had this problem before, and see what they think. Again, what we're recommending here is that you sit down before you do anything. You make a list so that when you do have the conversation and a curveball is thrown to you, right? Well, I have a medical condition, for example, curveball. You're then able to be somewhat more prepared because you've thought through, what are all my options here? How are the different ways I could help this individual?
That's all for this week, folks. We'll be back next week with a continuation of this topic.